Hello, my name is Anne Casparsson, and I will talk a little bit about storytelling and how interviews can be very powerful forms of storytelling. And that is something I have experienced myself. Uh, Several years ago, for instance, together with a friend, I wrote a book about children living under occupation. And we choose to document children because we felt that their stories was not heard enough in mainstream media. And it was an extremely strong experience to follow these children and hear their stories. It was 18 children between 12 and 18 that we met with. Hear about their fears, their joy, their longings, their experiences. And we could use these stories to many different stakeholders in Sweden when we came back, even politicians. And it was very beautiful, actually, to be able to have their testimonies and tell the stories of the children. And for the last years, I have been interviewing different people working with animal rights and the liberation of animals, and especially the dairy industry, but also other forms of animal agriculture and so on. And it has also been very powerful. And I believe the stories can really open people's hearts and minds in different ways. And also to highlight all the amazing work that is going on in the world at the moment. And I will start in Switzerland with an example of the work that Sarah Heiligtag is doing. She, together with her husband, started the transformation movement in 2019. And today they have helped several hundreds of farmers to transition away from animal agriculture and do other things instead. And also farmers from other countries are contacting them on a regular basis. And one of these farmers is Lucas, and I will read a little bit about him. Lucas has been a dairy farmer together with his brother for many years. Even for him, the deep joy is profound when he can follow his conscience. In 2020, they stepped out of dairy, thanks to the help through Sarah and her husband, and started to grow food instead. The hardest part for us was always separating the calves from their mothers, Lucas says. As soon as they were born, we had to take them away. It was heartbreaking every single time. The calves searching for the udder, the cows calling for days, restlessly pacing in the barn or out on the pasture. Watching this suffering tore us apart inside. The ethical question was always there, even when they ran the dairy farm. Just because something has always been done that way, does that make it right? Can you really justify breaking a mother's strongest instinct just to be able to sell milk? These thoughts weighed heavily on us until we finally found the courage to step out of that cycle, he says. As they began to transition away from animal agriculture and the dairy industry, they felt liberated. And Lucas describes how now seeing the cows being able to stay with their calves fills them both with deep joy. We can feel how much calmer and more balanced the animals are, and we ourselves feel more at peace because we are no longer forced to act against our own values. Another example I would like to share is from New Zealand and the animal activist Summer Jane and what she said in an interview I did with her. It was on a visit to a friend's parents' dairy farm in 2013 when Summer Jane learned that the new mother cows were referred to as colostrum cows. I watched as they were marched into the milking shed, trudging along with their heads hanging and a deep sadness in their eyes. They were some of the most depressed animals I ever seen. Over at the calf shed, when I started asking questions about the tiny calves, I learned that some of them were destined for the truck, which meant that they would be killed. That was the beginning of opening my eyes to the cruelty of dairy production, Summer says. Today, she is a very active activist, and they are bearing witness to the millions of bobby calves that are killed every year in New Zealand. And she says this quote, "No matter how many truckloads of babies we witness entering slaughterhouse gates, it's always a heart-shattering experience. They are so fragile and so vulnerable. They cry out for their mothers and try to self-soothe by suckling our fingers. But even though it's difficult, we also see it's a blessing to be able to give the few moments of love and kindness to some of the babies in their final moments, and to memorize their little faces and tell their stories in the hopes that people will turn away from this industry and it will end." This is a story from the US and an undercover investigator who started the animal recovery mission in 2009. And his name is Richard Couto. And today they are doing investigations all over the US with a special focus on the dairy industry. And he said something that really was stuck with me. It was an amazing investigation story he told me in the article, but something that really stuck with me that I'd like to share. At Butterfield, the undercover investigator was hired right away for the calf barn with 5,000 calves. The worker's job was to go around to all the hutches and inject these small calves with drugs. Being in constant contact with Richard, the drugs that were too harmful for the babies, the investigator would pour out. Some of the drugs were helping the calves to fall asleep so they could not try to move around in the pens, so small they could hardly move. The needles are fat and thick and extremely painful for the calves. All calves were injected 8 times a day, he says. People don't really think about it. The screams just from the needles itself are horrifying. Something that is very close to my heart are how we actually treat the calves. It's so sad how we can do this. And a few years ago, I understood how we are exporting, that some countries are exporting newborn dairy calves for veal around the countries, and how horrific this industry is. And in Ireland, Caroline Rowley is the director of ethical farming Ireland, and she has a broad experience of doing this. I will just read a little bit from that interview. At a calf sale at the mart, the noise is horrendous and it is complete chaos. It's stressful for them. It's cold and damp in there. They are crowded in these pens. Some have bedding, but many don't. The calves are on concrete flooring without food. We have seen them there for early in the morning to 7 p.m. in the evening without food all day long. They are licking the walls, trying to suck on the bars because they are starving. We went to the mart that had a calf sale in the evening. Some teenagers were working there, hitting the calves around the head and rear end because the calves don't know what they are meant to be doing and are running around totally confused. It is noisy, stressful, and chaotic. We spoke to the market manager, who informed us that the calves would go back to the farm that evening. But Caroline didn't believe that, so they stayed nearby, and early in the morning the next day they went back. And sure enough, when we turned up, there you could hear the calves bawling. They had been there all night, and I do not think they had been fed. Instead, they were fed at around 11 a.m. in the morning, and the ferry left at 9 p.m. that evening. I would like to end with a story from Lima, Peru, and an activist who experienced a very traumatic, she had a very traumatic experience because she saw a cow still alive being cut with a knife in the neck. And the cow was pulled up in one leg and hung from the ceiling and tried, in full panic. And she felt that, it was too hard to bear, but she was in shock for days and she felt awful and tried to forget what she had witnessed. For a period, she stopped going to the vigils, even if she continued to be an activist. But I came to a point when I realized that I needed to work with my feelings and transform my trauma. In my mind, I saw the cow again, but this time I went to her and hugged her. I promised her that I would use all my power to keep working for change and liberation for animals. Today, she's grateful for the experience because it changed her life. It helped her to transform from being a shy vegan into someone that speaks up for the animals regardless. And I think that is what we need to do. We need to use our voices for these incredible beings and work for animal liberation through storytelling and through other means. Thank you.